all I know is that choreography should not be in there. I think that's a no word. You've got orchestrator, that's fine. I can go that far. But when you get to choreography, I'll draw the line. Stop the nonsense now. That's enough. Hello and welcome to the Cloud Therapist channel. I'm Richard Simon. This is the May 2024 episode of Cloud State of Play. I have another special guest for you guys for this month. Cheryl Hung is a dear friend and gets up to all sorts of cloud native stuff, far more than actually I do. So she's probably very appropriate to have her on as a guest. So let's say hello to Cheryl and let's kick off. Cheryl, how are you doing?
Hi, Richard. Yeah, I'm good. I'm really happy to be back on the channel again.
Fantastic. So it's lovely to see you and to have you back on again. And yeah, welcome to Cloud State of Play. I think this is your first time on here. So we'll,
That's right.
I'm sure we're going to have lots of fun doing it. Okay. So are we in the summer yet? Has the kind of summer broken through yet? What do you think?
Yeah, we might finally be there. It's
Yeah.
been a bit of a rubbish summer so far.
It has been.
Yeah, it's looking up now.
Yes. Okay. All right. So before we go on, just in case anybody kind of doesn't know who you are, give us a quick intro to yourself.
Sure. I'm Cheryl Hung. You can find me online at 𝗏𝑦𝑐𝗳𝗁𝑚. I'm the Senior Director of Infrastructure Ecosystem at Arm. I'm also the founder of Cloud Native London, which is a meetup group with over 8,000 members. And it's great to be back here.
Fantastic. Excellent. Okay, yeah, so Cheryl does do the Cloud Native London meetup event, and we'll obviously based in London. So do check that out, but we'll leave you details kind of in the description of the video on how to get hold of that and actually look at some of the previous episodes. I think you publish everything on your channel, don't you?
Yeah, it's all on YouTube. But if you are ever in London, first Wednesday of the month, please do come hang out with me. Yeah, we do talks, we do pizza, we do beer, and we do pub afterwards.
That's why I turn up for. Okay, right. So as always traditional on Cloud State of Play, we have 3 topics for you for this month. So the first one is a McKinsey article. I think they don't call it a report; they're calling it an article. It was published in April of this year, and it's called "The State of Cloud in Europe." So I'm really dying to find out what all the statistics are for that. I think that's going to be really interesting. So that's the first topic. Second topic is a State of Kubernetes Jobs report. I think that's really appropriate considering this is the 10th anniversary, I think they were celebrating for Kubernetes. Fantastic. Okay, so that was something published on LinkedIn, and it focuses on the first quarter of this year. And then finally, I thought there was a really interesting chart that somebody published again on LinkedIn called the Software Architecture Designs or Styles. So it's a chart that's really useful. I think it kind of gives a good summary of kind of, the different types of software architectures that are out there. And we thought we'll just kind of go through that and see what it's like and just check it out and put some of our comments on it. Okay, so let's dive into the topics. The first one, as we said, is the McKinsey, the State of Cloud in Europe report. This was published, or it's an article, I should say, published in April of this year. Now, Cheryl, I think the report said that they'd surveyed dozens of C-level execs for the report. That was the first thing I picked up on. And I think maybe the summary of it was the first, I think it was the first line. It said increasing adoption, seeing lower returns, but huge potential.
Yeah. So to your first point on surveying dozens of C-level executives, that's a very McKinsey thing to do. Which is not to say that it's, this is wrong. I think that some of this article definitely reflects what I've seen at the ground level as well. But obviously, when you're surveying the C-level executives, you're going to have a different view.
Yeah.
From, an engineering perspective. And then in terms of the increasing adoption and low returns and stuff, one of the things I really caught on to was this idea, this line about the focus of cloud efforts has been disproportionately on improvements to IT, which generate lower rates of value than improvements to business operations.
Yes. Yeah, I picked up on that as well. That was interesting.
Yes, yes. What did you think about what's business operations?
I think there were, I'm not sure if they're kind of using the right terminology. Maybe for me, it sounded more like, kind of moving to cloud in order to improve the IT kind of aspect of it, the technical aspect. So actually to improve IT versus moving to cloud in order to improve the kind of or get the business benefits maybe, and kind of do the, get a better return on that aspect of the type of technology that you're using.
So I think there's some overlap here in terms of what I think of as IT operations versus business operations, right? So the classic one is, if your website is down and you're not generating revenue, then improving your uptime also improves your revenue and your profit, right?
Yeah.
Or the other one, I guess, if you can ship more frequently, then you can improve your customer's experience and hopefully generate more revenue from that. But I was also struggling to think, like, what are improvements to IT that that don't generate business value, or why would you do them otherwise?
Yeah, I think it's I think there has been probably a little bit of a sort of focus on not just doing IT for the sake of IT. I think I actually even read this somewhere else. Somebody else was kind of having a similar sort of discussion around it. For we've seen benefits of moving to cloud to streamline IT processes, but that hasn't necessarily directly translated into a business benefit or some kind of value for the business. But for me, you see, I think that's actually not a bad thing. We're not necessarily always having to focus everything that we do in IT has to have a business benefit. Sometimes it is for the for the benefit of the IT team to make their life easier and actually allow them to innovate and do new stuff, focus on more things, and automate as many of the kind of menial tasks as possible. And then that innovation and that freedom that they have to do those other things would probably then translate into proper business value. So it's a kind of maybe a two-step approach. Whereas, I think all of the reports just kind of say, well, you're only doing it for IT, so that's no good because there's no business, value to that. You're not getting any benefit for the business. Well, actually, hang on. We're trying to improve ourselves first, and then in order to actually be able to then kind of turn that around and make it a benefit to the business.
Yes, I totally agree with that. I think there is value to making your own work life better.
Yeah.
Streamlining it, as you say, getting rid of the manual tasks that you're doing repetitively. That is perhaps, that is maybe what they mean by just improvements to IT. Maybe.
Yeah, and like I said, I think I've heard that somewhere before. And again, right at the start, I think they hit you with the cloud value. Where's the value in being in the cloud? It's like, well, hang on. Let's get to DevOps. Let's get to kind of, some automation. And, that's the whole point. It's a journey, right? And we've talked about kind of, the migration being a journey. I think I've spoken, to a number of people on this channel about, this kind of digital transformation and so on being a journey. And it's not something that you just kind of land and say, okay, that's it. We're in the cloud. We're done. Tick a box and move on, right? So
yeah. Well, as you say, it's a bit of a McKinsey style, right?
Yes. Yes.
Capturing value.
Yeah.
Beyond anything else.
Yeah, and it says kind of there's a lot of kind of uniqueness to European companies in terms of that sort of maybe mantra or understanding. But then it said 95% of those surveyed are getting value from the cloud. So I was a little bit confused by that. But the intention was there. And again, as you said, because this is kind of exec level, the intention is there to move more than 50% of workloads into the cloud. So again, that kind of increasing adoption that the report or the article said at the beginning is definitely there.
I do agree. I think one thing that they don't really point out in here is what is the difference, or is there a difference with the European companies, apart from perhaps
that's true.
ones in North America might have adopted it faster or earlier. But is there any difference beyond?
Yeah, I mean, I've kind of working for the European company, I've kind of certainly noticed there is a differential between kind of the UK and the US, for example, in terms of our adoption, of cloud versus kind of on the continent, if you like. I think we've put behind us the question of why cloud many years ago, whereas on the continent and with some customers, my recent experience tells me that they actually still ask the why cloud question. Whereas maybe our why cloud is kind of morphed a little bit. It's not the moving to cloud, but why cloud for this workload, or why cloud specifically for something that we're trying to do versus doing it on-prem or something like that. So that's certainly a difference. And then
do you mind if I jump forward slightly?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, absolutely.
Comment on that. There was a point in the I think it's number 4 near the bottom of the article, where it says 40% adoption. Well, for this particular company, 40% adoption was required to achieve positive 8-year ROI, while adoption beyond 80% yielded more costs than benefits. I thought that's very interesting. I presume when they're talking about this, they're talking about, well, are they talking about number of workloads, or
presumably was that in the way forward, and it said kind of be more clear about your ROI trade-offs or something?
Because I've never seen a number put on it, or perhaps even acknowledged that much.
That was interesting to kind of frame it like that.
Exactly. This idea that beyond 80% is not worth.
And it said be more realistic, I think, in that section. But it did. I mean, I think it did also picked up on that, and it said kind of focus on it more on the ROI. Focus on that being more on a case-by-case basis, I think, in that section. So at least that kind of, I guess that's kind of being more realistic, I suppose, because as we said, sometimes it's not a direct effect of that ROI. Is not a direct effect that you see. It's not a tangible thing that you see on your bottom line, your spreadsheet or something. It's more of a, doing this, moving this workload to the cloud, did it allow us to scale better? Did it allow us to be more responsive to our customers? Are we getting more uptime? Could we now branch off into a new territory that would have taken us 18 months to do, if we were kind of still on, that kind of return versus maybe a direct return of, I don't know, revenue created or something like that, revenue generated or something.
You make a really good point, because it doesn't go into here what it means by costs over benefits.
No.
And from an IT perspective, you could argue that, okay, if you kept some of it on-prem, it's cheaper. But as you say, it makes it harder for you to then scale up into a new territory, or even if you need to do some kind of disaster recovery, if everything is in the cloud and everything is consistent and everything is automated, that's far easier to go through a disaster recovery than it is if you have 20% on-prem and some in a completely different environment. So I think that is not perhaps captured in here. Perhaps there's a risk element that's not captured. And
I think again, at the early on the report, it just kept on hammering this point of the value, and it said I think one of the quotes again I picked up was, it said value remains in isolated pockets and at a subscale. But I think any survey that we do sort of from last year, I guess, maybe in 2022, up to probably 2030, we will see a lot of this kind of same effect. And I think this is very much the impact of lift and shift. So for those early adopters who just kind of lifted and shifted, and then, like I said, ticked that box and said, we're in the cloud, and then just kind of sat there. Because we have seen that around cost, for example, the cost of cloud, people saying, it's quite expensive. And again, let's not forget things like, COVID as well, where a lot of organizations had to digitize. They had to be digital, they had to be remote, they had to kind of do all their stuff, in a much, easier way. And the only way to do that was to essentially move it into a cloud environment of some kind or another. So again, value, yes, okay, it's not there, or we need to work on that. But I think it needs to take into account some of these kind of historic events as well.
You reminded me actually of not really IT. This is a much smaller scale of when COVID hit. I was working for a company that was already fully remote. Everything was in the cloud, and therefore there was really no impact. It just meant that everyone works from home instead of, going into an office or going into meeting people at conferences. Whereas my husband was working for a company which was very much this in-office culture.
Right.
You cannot work from home. You cannot take a laptop home. So when COVID hit, they went, oh shit, like now everybody go and sit at home while we try and buy enough displays and laptops for everybody and ship them to your home. And, we have to now virtualize everything quickly so that you can continue to work on it from home.
Exactly.
That's exactly like in a small scale.
Yeah.
This is
so multiply that by 1,000 companies or 1 million companies or whatever, and then globalize that, and then everybody wants to get a laptop or a notebook computer, right? So they can work from home, because that's what's happening. Yes, I think that's. In fact, actually, I've not seen enough of that sort of focus on what happened to IT during that period, and how did IT teams actually manage to keep IT going when everybody's using I don't know, some kind of desktop or notebook computer at the office, but it wasn't necessarily something that you took home, and you didn't necessarily kind of have a VPN, to go from, work from, and certainly not for everybody within the organization. But now everybody's working from home, right? We've got a lockdown on our hands, and now everybody's working from home. So how do you do that? How do you cope with that, right? So
exactly. The company that I was working for, because it was already fully remote, paying more probably month by month, paying for all these cloud services, but it meant there was no disruption when something like COVID hit.
Exactly. Okay, so the other bit that I picked up on, it said lots of potential up for grabs, around $3 trillion if you kind of go beyond adoption. I can't remember whether it actually said what that $3 trillion was. Was that kind of, if you improve yourself, or if you improve the IT, then that means you kind of, you got more, you can generate more revenue? Or is that actually kind of, if you do that, then the spend on cloud means that you can go beyond adoption of cloud? They use the word adoption as a kind of maybe your first step into the cloud. That's the idea that I got from the article.
So I think the line you're referring to is this one that says, up to $3 trillion is up for grabs for Forbes Global 2000 companies that go beyond cloud adoption and venture into innovation and pioneering.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
I was immediately like, innovation and pioneering what exactly?
It
was very.
And what is that $3 trillion? Is that like revenue generated, or I don't know what that is.
On what time scale is this 3 trillion over the 100 years? Like, who knows?
By next weekend?
Yeah.
Obviously, they couldn't help themselves. They had to throw in Gen AI, of course.
They had to throw in.
They had to copy and paste paragraph of Gen AI. If you throw in AI, Gen AI into the mix, you'll definitely be getting that. You might actually get that $3 trillion yourself. So
you might do, or you might not. Who knows?
Exactly.
I mean, arguably, there's, lots of value in Gen AI. And the big thing about Gen AI is almost everybody has to do it in the cloud.
Yeah.
There's no companies that have enough scale and revenue and whatever else to have that many GPUs in their own data centers. So that bit I buy. That bit I buy is like, if you're in the cloud, it will be an easier step for you to adopt Gen AI if you want to.
Yeah.
The $3 trillion to me seems, well, perhaps there is a link there. Perhaps there is more detail.
Yeah, and then the other bit was, I think, around the share of cloud workloads. This was quite interesting because I think the extremes seem to be quite low. So that 80% of the enterprises only had about 13% of workloads in the cloud. So the sweet spot seemed to be that kind of middle point. 20 to 50%, I think, of enterprise had about 34% of workloads in the cloud. What did you think? Did you pick up on that? What was kind of your thoughts on that?
Let me just find that bit. Where are we looking at?
Oh, somewhere in there. I think it was a chart. It was the chart that showed 100% and so on.
Oh, yeah, this is lower than I expected. And perhaps this is my bias from working with a lot of companies who are very heavily into cloud already. So yeah, less than 20%, 34% of companies have less than 20%. Wow. I don't know if that's correct. Share of cloud workloads on cloud.
I think it's workloads.
Share of workloads.
Yeah. But yeah, it was. I mean, I don't know. I don't expect that to be any different because I hear lots of statistics. People kind of saying, well, only 5% of global workloads are actually in the cloud, type of thing. So I don't know. I mean, that might sound like a little bit of a wild number, but maybe it's true. I don't know.
Well, they say
we have a long way to go. That's for sure.
N equals 38. That's a very small number of companies. Actually, I presume this explains when they say they surveyed dozens of companies. They surveyed 38 companies.
Yes.
I'm not going to put too much faith in this chart.
Yeah.
Numbers in the chart.
Yeah. It's not exactly exhaustive, is it? So, okay. Now moving on. I mean, again, value comes back, and again, putting business value first in search of cloud value. I think is another article, one of their articles that they refer to as well. So I guess that was more, based around the value. There's a link of that in this actual article anyway, so you can just click through to the cloud value one as well. It said also, it listed, there was another chart, it showed the 11 major cloud migration challenges as well. And it kind of split that into two things. It had kind of the drivers, the cloud transformation drivers side, and the cloud transformation challenges side. So only a couple of points on that, I think, for me. On the driver's side, it said you have to partner with CSPs and GSIs or systems integrators. And I thought that was, well, yeah, you do need to do that. It's fairly intuitive to kind of look at that. And then the other one, I think we're both going to like on the challenges side, where it said cloud native IT delivery. That's the challenge. Well, yes, you do need to do
how you do it.
Yeah.
Like, can you do it?
Yeah, but it's, I mean, I guess, what do you think? I think it's an affirmation, right?
I must admit, like, my first thought was, oh, that is pretty high for the partnerships with CSPs and SIs. But then I thought, actually, you know what? That's reasonable.
Yeah.
Most companies don't have that skill in-house. Presumably they do mean it as a partnership rather than it's the SIs or the CSPs driving it, but maybe not.
Yeah. No, I mean, from my experience and kind of being in that position, it's predominantly a partnership. Sometimes what does happen, though, is that, when we engage on a customer project, we may be driving, we may have more resources on it at the beginning, but then that sort of percentage changes, or that ratio changes later on as the customer picks up and takes more responsibility and things like that. But certainly I think you have to be really kind of, you have the resources and you have to be very technically savvy in order to be able to do it yourself. And most people are quite busy anyway, so they just say, well, we'll just partner with somebody to help us do the migration and let them do all the, the heavy lifting kind of approach to it.
I think that makes sense to me.
Yeah.
I guess the one that I was surprised wasn't actually higher was the talent on the challenges.
Yes, that was a bit further down the chart, wasn't it?
Yeah,
that was quite interesting. Yeah,
but
that was quite
I might
interesting.
feel more like 100% of companies still with getting the right talent.
Yeah. But I like that chart. I think it hit on the right points, both on the driver's side and the challenges. And then it listed things like leadership, technical foundation, and a cloud strategy. Get yourself a bloody cloud strategy. That's really important. So although it's nothing new, it was still very useful. I think it kind of confirmed everything.
Yeah, I agree. There's nothing that I would strongly disagree with here.
Sure. Okay, so way forward, I think was the last section. I think we'll just skim through that very quickly. There was 5, I think, points. We hit on number 4 already, the ROI trade-offs, but it said things like develop relationships with CSPs and GSIs. Yeah. Have an operating model, migration funding. Yes. I think that's all useful. Cloud operating model, definitely very useful. And one of the kind of bases that you need to really achieve. I would add to that things like a cloud competency center or a cloud center of excellence is kind of being the main team that will drive that for you. That goes back to that ratio that I mentioned to you as well, where sometimes we do a lot of we drive that CCOE for the customer, and then that ratio kind of changes to having more of their resources on the in the CCOE. Modernize the way you work. I mean, that's quite general. The bit that I picked up on that, or the sentence I picked up on, it said, given the importance of working with CSPs and SIs, companies will need to be deliberate in treating them as partners and integrating them into their operating model. Yes, so they need to really look at us as as a systems integrators or GSIs, global integrators, as partners. We're not just there to kind of deliver a piece of work and then we're out. We're there for the long term, and that's certainly kind of how we paint it. The third one I think was interesting: FinOps to optimize your cloud spend. Now, I think for me, yes, I would say FinOps kind of have that from the start. I think it's harder to try and retrofit that, into kind of an existing operating model. And yeah, I don't know what else. I guess, cloud cost management or cloud cost optimization, as some people call it, is probably a more targeted approach. What's your, how do you feel about that kind of FinOps on one side and maybe cloud cost kind of focus being on the other?
Yeah, I guess it's the top down or the bottom up view, right? Both trying to get to the same thing. I must say, I've not seen many companies actually implement a FinOps strategy and
tell me about it.
You do it from the beginning.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure we even have that many data points to compare.
Yeah.
I think it's a good idea, but I don't know if I put it as quite as strongly as the suggestion, just because I've seen so many companies do without, and they seem to be okay with the bottom up approach, where you track, I don't know, what things have been long running and not touched for a long time, and then you send an automated email, and tell the owner to shut it down. Like, that seems small scale and easier to implement. Yeah,
and I agree. And I think, as you said, I think it's just a top down and bottom up sort of approach, the top down kind of FinOps. And I think not everybody has those types of resources to throw at doing FinOps, right? I mean, the larger enterprises do, but the kind of the SMEs probably don't have that. So maybe for them, the cloud cost management or cloud cost optimization is the better approach. You focus on certain areas, as you said, your storage or dev and test workloads and things like that. And then if nobody replies within a month to that email that you sent out, then you just shut down those workloads, basically. So yeah, and I mean, we've seen actual tools in that space, like KubeCost, for example, and so on. They're actually focusing on that type of thing. Okay, yeah, and sorry, go ahead.
For the majority of small to medium-sized companies.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Okay. And we said, yeah, I think we talked about 4, so that's the ROI trade-offs. And then again, number 5, leveraging CSPs and GSIs for bridging compliance, so actually bridge the compliance requirements. So this, I guess, is more kind of around regulation compliance.
I think that's sensible. I don't really have any disagreements here.
Yeah. And again, because those things are kind of evolving, I guess it makes sense to, leverage, platforms and solutions that maybe have already ticked those boxes that you're looking for. Okay, right. So I think we've discussed that enough. So let's move on to the State of Kubernetes Jobs report, which is from a company called 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 really cool. So you can have kube and then careers with a K. So kube careers, guys, if you're listening or watching this, do consider that. I think that would be cool. But anyway, really good report. I was quite surprised by the level of depth, and it's only a first quarter report. I don't know if they do this every quarter or not, but
come across this site.
yeah, and it's hot off the press, it's a May publication as well, so that's quite cool. And they surveyed for, well, a number of different things, but really jobs that require, I think the summary said, jobs that require Kubernetes experience, jobs that mention the salary range. I really like that, because not many people mention the salary range, and even when you're talking to, you know, the company or the recruiters, they're still kind of coy about, you know, what the range is. And then it was listed jobs that are listed by companies and not recruiters, which is even better. So that's kind of maybe putting that extra filter on it, which I thought was quite useful. What did you kind of what were some of the things that you picked up from the report?
Well, since you mentioned salaries already, I like the fact that they've put the salaries and also split the salaries out by region, because the US or North America and Europe salaries look really quite different. Did they have the average North American Kubernetes job salary is 176,000, and in they actually don't say for Europe, but they say the highest recorded salary in Europe was 158,000 euros.
Yes, euros, yeah.
That was the absolute maximum. That's not even, that's what, not dissimilar. It's not, I have to do the euro to dollar conversion here, but it is very clear from, if you see it, you see the.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, I picked up on, I think the bit that I picked up on was the, you know, how much does a Kubernetes job pay? So it ranged from, I think, $135,000 to $188,000. Where are they, you know, located? Well, you know, 61% in North America. Average range in North America was $147,000, and in Europe it was 158,000, as you said, euros. And what else was there? The other one I picked up on, I don't know, I'll kind of get your thoughts on this. It said the you know, the jobs market is seeking software engineers, DevOps, and SREs.
Yes, I thought that was very interesting, and not only software engineers, but 43% of the jobs they published was software engineer. So very high, disproportionately high. Well, DevOps engineer was 10%. So 43, and then 10% was the next one.
Right.
I'm a software engineer myself by background, but and I wonder whether these are software engineers building a Kubernetes platform, or if they're software engineers, well, I'd think of that as a platform engineer, or a software engineer building an application that would run on top of Kubernetes.
Yeah. So are they in that sort of DevOps thing, or are they doing that platform engineering thing, which you and I talked about a while back, didn't we, in our previous talk? So yeah.
Like, are they more, are they more of the application developer, or are they the platform engineer?
Yeah.
That's both rolled into software engineer.
Yeah. So I guess it's, I don't know. I mean, I guess it depends on kind of their definition of what do they see as fitting under software engineer. But that, it was interesting, those kind of are there. The other one I picked up on was 7 to 10 jobs kind of allow you to do remote work. But the remote work doesn't mean that you actually work from anywhere. It said it's kind of, some of it is geographic based, yes, but some of it is time zone based, which is interesting. And that is a factor, I guess.
It is. And it makes a big difference, actually. I've seen more of these, must work within North America time zone or European time zone as a requirement.
Yeah. And then the other one for me, the last one, I think, was the popular technologies for Kubernetes jobs. Now, obviously, probably goes without saying that you need some Docker skills to do that, some containerization skills. But then the other interesting thing that I picked up on, I don't know if you saw that chart, but it said the chart seemed to show a lot more at the top anyway of the chart. It seemed to show a lot more focus on databases and database types. So you had, Postgres, you had MySQL, Redis, and so on. And something like Helm was kind of almost halfway down the list, which was, I thought it was quite interesting to see that. And some of it was, kind of Kafka and Redis, and some kind of more, event-driven, real-time, type of thing as well. So a lot more focus on, certainly obviously on containers, but then immediately after that was kind of a bunch of databases that you need to be good at in order to, to do the job. So I would guess that would be in the description, of the role. So there's obviously, Kubernetes, obviously containers, and then, you must have, PostgreSQL or MySQL or, whatever experience, to go with that as well.
And one more thing to note on these databases is Postgres and MySQL are old. They've been around a long time, right? Compared to some of the other technologies listed.
Yeah. Yeah. So hang on, what's going on here? Are we moving our old databases into containers then? Is that what we're doing?
I think that might be what's happening. I think a lot of companies would find it very difficult to switch away from a tried and tested database.
Yeah.
Like Postgres and MySQL, but yeah, they hang around forever, don't they?
That was quite interesting, yeah, because I think it did mention a couple of the kind of more database as a service types, the ones in the public cloud, but actually there were, I think, down the list. I think I did pick up on one or two of them, but they were down the kind of the list of importance.
I feel like if we looked at this chart again in another 5 years, Postgres and MySQL would still be there.
Yes. Yeah.
They'll never be.
Guys, you're still lifting and shifting. What's going on? McKinsey won't like you for that. It's not value.
Not value add, huh? No, it's not capturing value.
It's not capturing value. It's not business value. Yes. Okay. And then did you look at the section that said observability adoption in Kubernetes implementation? So I think that was the last section. I only kind of skimmed through that, but I was just curious to see whether you picked up on anything kind of jumped at you from that.
I did see this. This didn't surprise me. Well, I mean, Grafana and Prometheus certainly didn't surprise me. Datadog was pretty high, but Datadog is pretty popular. So
yeah, I think, I mean, I certainly picked up on that. What do you think? Is it kind of, are we still not seeing kind of observability, real sort of observability being used in, with these types of, projects, like kind of Kubernetes stuff? Or is it more likely it is observability, it's just not the kind that we measure, because the teams that are kind of building these, Kubernetes clusters, they're just using whatever the public cloud providers really offering them. So if they have like a monitoring tool or a so-called observability tool, then they just use that. They don't go to like a off-the-shelf tool or something like that.
I hadn't thought about it that way. I mean, I feel like the default now seems to be, if you're using Kubernetes, you use Prometheus. You're using Prometheus, you use Grafana. Everything else beyond that is extra work, I guess.
Yeah.
Um,
So things like, I mean, what's the progression of that? I guess that would be open telemetry or something. Would that be kind of the next phase of that?
I have not seen much of a pattern.
Yeah, I don't know. I really don't know. If anybody's watching this and knows, please drop something in the comments. I haven't got a clue, really. And I don't know if, I mean, I can't remember. I may have probably read this already and mentioned it somewhere else in another video. I can't remember if, how would the adoption be? Was it open telemetry that would need to pick up on, I don't know, it should be the other way around, maybe. Prometheus at least would would standardize on open telemetry, I guess. It would be that way around, I guess, if you're kind of doing standards. Because I know the likes of Datadog, Dynatrace, and so on would be, I would assume that their platforms, to kind of comply with that type of approach and that sort of standard in the APIs there, they would need to adopt or integrate open telemetry as part of their platforms. So I'm assuming that's kind of the gold standard, in sort of an open source, and cloud native, and then everything else kind of fits it into their platform.
I could see that. Yeah, I'd buy that.
Yeah. Okay. What was anything else in that observability adoption? Was there any numbers and stuff that stood out for you?
I think the top programming language being Python was surprising, and not Go.
Okay.
But again, perhaps they are offering jobs for application developers, where you're perhaps less likely to use Go. Whereas if you're working as a platform engineer on Kubernetes, Go seems the most obvious. Yes.
Yeah, that's interesting as well. I think a lot of this may, well, I don't know, maybe it will probably kind of steady out and stay as it is. But anyway, a really fascinating report. I thought that was really cool. And I've not seen anybody do this before. And the fact that these guys are actually presumably recruiters, and I've not checked that the company, I just really love their report. The fact that they're kind of in that space, that does give you, I think, a good sort of indicator to the information. So yeah, Kube Careers, State of Kubernetes Jobs Report for first quarter 24. I thought that was quite cool. Hey, if you are enjoying the content, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel. That would really help me out. Thank you. So let's move on to the third topic, if that's okay. And that is the software architecture chart, software architecture styles chart by, now the name of the company is 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝐺o, but the guy who actually posted it was I think a regular contributor on LinkedIn. Does put out a lot of these kind of charts and things like that. They also have like a cheat sheet, I think, system design cheat sheet somewhere. So I'll try and include the link of that. I will try and put this up on the screen as well, so you guys can kind of see it and pause it. But the link will be in the descriptions. That's probably the best place to look at it, and you can kind of download it and have a look at it yourself and have a read. So the styles are kind of quite comprehensive. There's quite a lot of them there in terms of these sort of software architecture styles. I first of all was not aware that there's obviously quite a lot, but it's nice to, again, that's why it's kind of nice to have this sort of chart. And the chart just kind of breaks down the different types of architectures into kind of different segments. So you got everything from, well, let's go around the wheel, layered to component-based, service-oriented, distributed system, domain-driven, event-driven, which has, I think, come up quite a lot recently, separation of concern, interpreter, concurrency, and data-centric. So a lot of styles there. Again, we're not going to be able to do justice to to the whole chart kind of here, and we probably don't know most of the stuff there. Some of it was quite surprising even to kind of to us, when we looked at that. But it does kind of break down some of them sort of outside of that wheel chart, which I thought was quite useful. And yeah, and they go everything from, what did you pick up on, Cheryl? I picked up on microkernel architecture, and again microservices architecture.
Right, I haven't heard microkernels for quite a while, I feel. I think this is architecture in very many different ways of interpreting architecture.
Yeah.
So some of them are almost a bit more business-oriented ways of describing an architecture, and then some are, I have to go back to my sort of CS 101 days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have to just warn the viewers. Both Cheryl and I have kind of hung up our architecture coats or hats a long time ago. So, but it's still nevertheless, I think, interesting, and obviously compiling it all together was the thing that really captured it for me.
Yeah, it's quite nice to see them all together. Said, I would have, in my mind, I think of some of them as quite separate. So it's kind of good to just see it sort of compared in different ways. Microservices is obviously the one that I'm most familiar with my cloud native background. Yeah. I was a little bit surprised that they separated Lambda from serverless.
Yeah. That's yeah, okay. That's interesting. Yes. Okay. So yes, I think so that was in the service oriented section of the wheel. And in that chart, on that side of the chart, says service oriented architecture, broker, microservices, and serverless, or function as a service. So I don't know. Yeah, I don't know whether I would, is that how they call it? They have serverless, and that is classed as function as a service, or FAS for short. I don't know. I thought those were slightly different, but I don't know. Maybe.
I think they are slightly different.
Yeah.
I think FAS is probably the most popular way to implement serverless, but there's no serverless is not serverless and FAS don't mean the same thing to me.
That's what I thought as well, because I get the impression that if you're going to do serverless, you just you're describing sort of the environment you want to build in the cloud. You take that through that sort of cloud engine or world engine that will like Lambda, that will actually generate the environment for you. You do what you want to do, whatever that environment is going to do, and then you tear it down when you don't need it, right? And you're not necessarily caring about because you've specified everything in your script for Lambda or whatever the world engine is. It just generates that environment for you, and you're not particularly kind of worried about certain aspects of of that implementation. So it gets implemented, it does whatever it's going to do, whatever the service is doing for your business, and then you tear it down. Whereas function as a service is kind of more taking advantage of some of the functions that are available in the cloud and actually hand weaving those into your script, and then bringing in your functions as well that will perform whatever that task is. And that could be as simple as batch processing to something extremely complicated. And that was kind of my understanding of it, but I don't know. I agree with you. I certainly wouldn't put those in kind of the same space.
I think you can do FAS you can do FAS on-prem. So FAS does not necessarily mean cloud functions.
Yeah.
But I would agree that FAS to me is a little bit more about the way you build your application. Perhaps Lambda or serverless, serverless is more of a principle, perhaps, or an approach.
Yes.
And then FAS is a specific set of rules and guidelines about how you structure your applications. And then Lambda even more is, AWS's version of.
Yeah, it's that. Yeah, I think I'd agree with that. I think one of them is kind of the principal approach, if you like, and not an actual architecture by itself. Yeah, the one that caught my eye as well which is on the breakouts, a space-based architecture, and I thought, is that like when you design it on the moon or something? Is it space architecture? Obviously, it's not. But it says this resolves the issues of data consistency, reliable performance, and scalability for large-scale distributed systems. Okay, so yeah, I mean, it's got kind of a virtualized, middleware, so all your sort of data and messaging grid and so on is in that, and then you've got separate sort of processing units. So that's interesting because they all seem to have their own sort of logic and database and various other sort of components as well. So
I've not heard of this space-based.
Yeah. So I mean, it's literally spacing things out and putting them into separate modules, I guess.
Perhaps, but what is? I mean, from a I don't know how I should call it. From a cloud native perspective, okay, things run on different servers, so different parts of space. Is that space?
Yeah, I don't know. Region? Is it kind of a region thing or?
Yeah, I don't know how big this processing unit that they're talking about. Is that
no idea?
Or is that a single CPU or what?
Maybe I don't know. Maybe a availability zone or region or something. And then the one bit I picked up on that said deployment manager. That's a bit of an antiquated term, I think. It shouldn't be like provisioning tool or something a little bit more modern these days. It takes me back to my IBM days of deployment managers. I had a tool called Remote Deployment Manager or something, RDM. Spent many a time enjoying fixing that piece of but yeah.
You remind me as well of under the concurrency section, there's one called orchestration. And in my head, of course, I go straight to Kubernetes and orchestration.
Yes.
And not
well, it says central coordinator, so often called the orchestrator, so maybe we can qualify for that.
Kind of is, but I would presume they're talking about orchestration at a slightly lower level.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Managing is for managing the control flow and data flow between services. Yeah.
Right, but is that like the operating system managing processes and threads? You think?
I don't know. All I know is that choreography should not be in there. I think that's a no word. You've got orchestrator, that's fine. I can go that far. But when you get to choreography, I'll draw the line. Stop the nonsense now. That's enough. It makes as much sense as Kubernetes now adopting names for their version releases. I'm sorry, but I really hate that. So okay, and the other one I picked up on was, this is actually quite interesting, the event-driven architecture. I really like that, and I think that's a kind of a different way of approaching things. Kind of you only take an action, or you're only active if there's if a particular event or set of events occurs, or a sequence, or whether it's linear or not, I'm not sure, but that kind of architecture I'm interested in. I don't think I have a sort of a huge grasp on it, but it's just kind of the idea of it, the concept of it, I really like. So it says promotes the production, detection, consumption, and reaction to events. Yeah, okay. As to how it kind of really works and stuff, I don't know, maybe this is kind of, lending itself more. I mean, I know things like, you need sort of event managers and things like that, right? And you kind of, need to load balance stuff and so on. You need to, broker things. I think it's got a broker in there or something like that. Yeah, messaging broker. Yeah. So you do need some kind of a messaging broker, because you can't, I guess that kind of acts as your sort of load balancer. You can't really just kind of throw all the events at something. So you do need that kind of, broker sort of approach. And then as, depending on what the event is, certain aspects of your architecture will start reacting to it, right? And, take actions based on that type of event that you're receiving. So I do like that, because I think that is more modern. And a lot of people seem to be talking about, when something's happening, like on your database, on your website or your IoT device or whatever it is, you want to, the data that you're capturing is not, you're not actually storing it, you're actually streaming it. So you're dealing with the event that brings in that data in real time, and then you process whatever that is. You take the action, and you maybe only store metadata. You don't actually store the data that you captured, right? So that is quite interesting. That's all kind of, I think, in this event-driven architecture space, which I find quite interesting. I think that's maybe, I don't know, maybe it's, I certainly remember kind of last couple of years, there was a lot of talk about, event-driven architecture. So, yeah.
I've only ever personally used it once, and that was for my undergrad thesis, actually.
Oh,
so
okay.
a long time ago.
Wow. That has taken you back a while then.
Yeah, it was, oh dear, I shouldn't really say that.
Oh, guys, I was trying to remember.
But I built a sort of game that you could control with, either a keyboard, or you could control it with I had a room set up with loads of cameras, and there's kind of black things you wear with the
move
it around, move your arms and legs around to move it.
Yeah.
And you could also output
the motion capture stuff. Yeah.
Right. And then you could either output it as just a thing on your screen, or you had a little robot that would follow these things. So because there were multiple input formats and multiple output formats, the event-driven thing made a lot of sense. And because it's all real time as well, because it was a game, you didn't need to store anything. You just interpret things as they come in. I don't know how that really works in the real world,
right?
But yeah, that is my only experience.
Right.
With event-driven architecture.
Cool. All right. Well, I think that's, I mean, like I said, I think the charter is very useful. At least kind of, gives you a nice summary of everything. So we do appreciate it. And it's, and it's got us kind of going on conversation and sort of understanding some of the areas of, and different styles of architecture. Okay. So I think we're there. We're going to close out. So, Cheryl, thank you very much for your insights and comments, as always. I always feel I learn something new whenever we have a conversation. So that's always
likewise. It's a joy. It's always a joy to be with you.
Indeed. All the details on Cheryl and how to get a hold of her, and Cloud Native Meetup details. If you fancy submitting a talk to Cheryl to actually do a talk at her Cloud Native Meetup in London, you can do so as well. I'll provide all the details for that. So we'll include all that for you in the description of the video. Thank you guys all for watching, and we will see you next time. Thank you for watching. Please don't forget to subscribe to the channel to support me. You may also want to check out some of the other videos on this channel. Bye for now.